She doesn't yell, she doesn't hit, she doesn't cheat, but she destroys, slowly in silence, with a smile on her lips. And the worst part, most men don't notice. They only wake up after losing time, energy, self-esteem, and sometimes everything at once. Because the most dangerous poison isn't what you see, it's what you ignore. Have you ever wondered why some relationships drain your strength even without big fights? Ever felt something was wrong but couldn't explain it? That's the thing. Some women aren't evil in obvious ways. They're evil strategically. And that's exactly what makes it more dangerous. While you think she's just in a bad mood or needs space, she's already shaping you into exactly what she wants: a quiet, confused, controlled man. And in this silent game, what's at risk isn't just your peace, it's your identity. In this video, you'll discover the 7 most ignored yet most devastating signs that reveal when a woman is manipulating you subtly but effectively. Don't be fooled. Many only see these signs when they're already emotionally broken. Your edge will be seeing it early and acting now. If you think being a good man is enough for a healthy relationship, this video will change your mind. Because here's the hard truth: nice guys are easy targets. But the man who sees, understands, and the one who understands doesn't get fooled anymore. So if you feel something's wrong but can't quite explain why, the first sign will show you where it all begins and how she sabotages you without you noticing. Ready to begin? 1. She subtly sabotages your progress. Some people come into your life not to help you grow, but to slow you down. And the worst part is, they do it with a smile. The woman with this profile doesn't yell, slam doors, or act aggressively. She slowly poisons your dreams in small doses, like diluted venom. By the time you notice, your self-trust is already gone. At first, she seems enchanted by your projects, but little by little, she questions everything you do, says it's risky, that maybe you're dreaming too big, that you should be more realistic. These sound like helpful suggestions, but they hide toxic traits. If you're not alert, you'll start believing them. Stoic philosophy teaches us that external judgment should not define our actions. Marcus Aurelius said that other people's opinions only have the weight we give them. When a woman discredits your path, she's trying to cut the wings of your internal freedom. And the man who doesn't see this early pays dearly later. Practical example: you say you want to start a business. She asks if that's just for people who don't want to work properly. This kind of comment, repeated over time, crushes your confidence. What to do? Distance yourself from anyone who doesn't believe in your potential. Surround yourself with those who cheer for your victories and push you forward. A man who cultivates self-awareness knows when he's draining energy trying to prove himself. If you feel like you need to justify every step, something's wrong. A healthy relationship doesn't require constant defense. It's a harbor, not a battlefield dressed as romance. She'll never forbid you from growing. She'll just make the path harder, draining the joy from your achievements. That's emotional sabotage. And if you don't have emotional mastery, you'll fall into the trap of thinking you're the problem, when in fact, she's the one afraid of seeing you free and fulfilled. If you feel like you've been regressing since entering this relationship, pay attention. That's not coincidence, it's a symptom. And the symptom points to a hidden but very present cause. The cycle of doubt and limitation usually begins with subtle phrases, which become routine and quietly drain your strength. Want a simple test? Share a personal plan with her. If her response comes with sarcasm, disdain, or a compliment disguised as criticism, sound the alarm. That's not care, that's control. And this is where the second sign begins. Something even harder to detect, but just as destructive. 2. She uses affection as a bargaining chip. Not every affectionate gesture is pure. Sometimes it comes loaded with hidden motives, even if the smile is sweet and the voice soft. When a woman uses affection as a reward for obedience, she isn't being loving, she's negotiating power. And power based on emotional blackmail is one of the most dangerous forms of manipulation. She gives you attention when you do what she wants. She ignores you when you disagree. She rewards with affection, but punishes with distance. It seems subtle, but over time it conditions you. Without realizing it, you start avoiding conflict just to keep the peace. And this is how imbalance begins. One side commands, the other adapts. Stoic mindset is clear about this. We must not depend on someone else's mood to maintain our inner balance. If affection comes with a price tag, that's not love, it's control. And a man who doesn't see this pattern ends up an emotional hostage to someone who's mastered the art of using affection as leverage. Ever seen a couple where the man is always walking on eggshells? He doesn't want to upset her because he knows if he does, he'll face silence, indifference, or even emotional blackmail. That's not a relationship, it's a disguised prison. When affection becomes a bargaining tool, freedom leaves and fear takes its place. The most dangerous part is how it's often wrapped in a victim narrative. She says she's distant because she's hurt or needs time. On the surface, it seems like vulnerability, but deep down, it's calculated punishment. A way to control your actions through the fear of emotional withdrawal. Classic toxic relationship move. Want to know if you're stuck in this cycle? Try a simple test. Make an independent decision without consulting her. Watch her reaction. If she responds with coldness, distance, or irony, you're dealing with someone who loves you only when you're obedient. That's not love, that's emotional domination. A man with emotional control understands that true love doesn't demand submission. It offers freedom, respects decisions, and doesn't punish opinions. Being at peace doesn't mean being submissive. If you're always worried about her reaction, something's already off and needs to be faced before it rots. The problem is, the more you give in, the more she demands. It turns into a one-way street, a cycle where she rules through affection and you get lost trying to earn it. But the next sign reveals an even more silent and cruel form of manipulation, guilt inversion. And my friend, that's a psychological game of the worst kind. She makes you feel guilty for everything. If something goes wrong, it's your fault. If she's sad, it's because you don't understand her. If she pulls away, it's because you didn't give her enough attention. This type of woman has a remarkable ability to twist facts and reverse responsibility. And if a man lacks self-awareness, he'll get lost trying to fix what was never his to begin with. She never apologizes. She justifies, and she always has an explanation that, somehow, points the finger at you. It's a well-crafted script where you're always the villain, and she's always the victim. This psychological game is designed to wear you down emotionally, and the more you try to please her, the more she demands. Stoic philosophy teaches us to separate what's within our control from what isn't. When you take on guilt that doesn't belong to you, you stray from your core and get closer to manipulation. A Stoic man doesn't carry someone else's emotional burden as his own. He investigates the facts and responds with reason. A practical example. You say you're going out with friends, and suddenly she changes her mood. She acts sad, says she feels neglected. You feel guilty, cancel your plans, and try to make it up to her. But that guilt isn't yours, it's hers, for not knowing how to handle insecurity without projecting it onto you. That's not sensitivity, it's blackmail. Over time, this pattern sets in. You start thinking twice before acting, afraid of her reactions. You begin living to avoid conflict, but the truth is, she'll always find something to be offended by, even if you did nothing wrong. Because it's not about what you do, it's about how she manipulates the story. A man with emotional mastery starts recognizing the emotional triggers she uses. He doesn't react impulsively. He observes, analyzes, and decides what's real. It's not coldness, it's wisdom. As Epictetus said, it's not events that disturb us, but our judgments about them, and distorted. Judgment is a weapon in the wrong hands. This type of woman doesn't want a partner. She wants a defendant, someone to accuse, blame, and emotionally control. She plays with your emotions to maintain power. And when you try to explain yourself, she takes it as an admission of guilt. That's why arguing is pointless. What she wants isn't resolution, it's control over your mind. And when emotional control no longer works, she escalates. It becomes drama, veiled threats, a theater where she's always the misunderstood one. But this, my friend, is just the surface. The next sign reveals an even more strategic manipulation, when she isolates you from the world and calls it love. For she isolates you from the people who strengthen you first. She complains about your friends. Then she criticizes your family. Before long, you start feeling uncomfortable around those who've always had your back. The tactic is subtle. She plants doubts, makes innocent comments, and sows distrust. Slowly, you isolate yourself, thinking you're just being mature. She says she's not comfortable around certain people, that she sensed some weird energy, that she feels like they don't really like her. This triggers a protective instinct in you, and without noticing, you begin avoiding the people who've always supported you. This is how narcissistic women operate. They destroy your support system. Stoic philosophy values surrounding yourself with people who strengthen your virtue, not corrode it. A Stoic man understands that his allies are shields against manipulation. When she tries to weaken those bonds, she's not just cutting off your social circle, she's chipping away at your inner strength. Isolation is control, and control is domination. Have you seen that guy who stopped going out, vanished from the scene, drifted from his siblings, even lost touch with his parents? In many cases, that wasn't a choice. It was disguised imposition. She doesn't like noise. She thinks your mom doesn't accept her. Your friends are too immature. These kinds of comments are red flags. Over time, the man finds himself alone. And the worst part, when the relationship collapses, he has no one to turn to because he burned all his bridges. This makes him even more dependent on her. And that's exactly what she wants. When you're isolated, you're weaker, easier to mold, and your emotional control fades. Practical example, every time you mention someone from your past, she rolls her eyes, criticizes, or shuts down. Know this, that's a blocking mechanism. The selective affection she gives you comes at a high price, your social freedom, and the bill comes due when you realize she's all you have left and no one else. Self-awareness becomes your shield at this point. You need to ask yourself, does she want what's best for me or to dominate me? If she tries to weaken everything that strengthens you, something is very wrong. If she only smiles when you're surrounded by no one but her, be careful. That kind of love has more bars than windows. And if you think this is the peak of manipulation, wait until you see the next sign. It involves no words, no direct action, something even more subtle, using silence as a weapon. And when silence hurts, it speaks louder than any scream. 5. She uses silence as punishment. Silence can be peace, but when used intentionally, it becomes emotional torture. Some women know this well. When things don't go her way, she goes silent, not to think, not to reflect, but to punish. And if the man doesn't understand the dynamic, he'll spiral, trying to fix something he can't even identify. She shuts down without warning, doesn't answer messages, ignores your presence, sleeps turned away, her eyes distant, her lips sealed. There was no fight, no explanation, just an invisible wall, built overnight. This is punishment disguised as introspection, and it strikes straight at the heart of a man's emotional control. A man lacking self-awareness feels he must have done something terrible, but he doesn't know what. And that's exactly what she wants, to see him begging for answers, crawling for scraps of attention. In this context, silence isn't absence, it's active manipulation, and the psychological damage runs deep. Stoic philosophy teaches us that the value of silence lies in its intent. Noble silence calms. Toxic silence wounds. When someone uses silence to dominate, she's weaponizing absence as a form of control. And this is one of the most treacherous tactics in toxic relationships. Practical example, you go against her in something simple. Choose a different restaurant, disagree with her opinion, or decide to go out alone. Suddenly, silence takes over. She doesn't explain. She just withdraws, and you, conditioned by the fear of rejection, try to fix things. That's the game. She goes quiet, you chase. This pattern repeats itself in cycles, and each time you yield, you reinforce the logic of punishment. Silence becomes a tool of control, not connection. A healthy relationship requires dialogue. Even during conflict, silence used as punishment is passive abuse, and it needs to be named as such. The man with emotional control responds differently. He doesn't chase, doesn't beg, doesn't blame himself. He watches, and if silence becomes the norm, he understands he's being manipulated. Instead of giving in, he sets boundaries, and at that moment, the dynamic changes. because she realizes her silence has lost its power. But silence isn't always the worst sign. Sometimes there's something darker: when she takes pleasure in your pain, when she feeds off your weakness, smiles at your suffering, and treats it as if it's nothing. That's when we cross into truly disturbing territory. 6. She enjoys seeing you suffer. Not every smile is kind. Sometimes it hides pleasure in your downfall. Some women don't want a happy man. They want a submissive one. And to achieve that, they need to weaken your vital energy. They feed off your pain, your exhaustion, your frustration. And the more you suffer, the more in control she feels. That pleasure isn't obvious. She doesn't say, "I love seeing you miserable." But it shows in small ways. When you share a frustration, she responds with sarcasm. When you fail, she smirks and says, "I told you so." Instead of offering support, she delivers humiliation disguised as honesty. This reveals deep toxic traits. The Stoic mindset teaches us that pain can be a tool for growth, but it should never be used as a weapon by someone close to us. A relationship should be a refuge, not a war zone. If the person beside you seems stronger when you're weaker, that's not love, that's veiled competition. Practical example: you're going through financial trouble. Instead of support, she says, "A real man wouldn't be in this position," or "None of my exes ever had this issue." That's not guidance. That's an attack, a direct hit to your masculinity. And the damage goes far beyond your wallet. It wounds your spirit. A man living with someone like this starts doubting his own worth. He avoids showing vulnerability, knowing it'll be used against him. He becomes an emotional hostage, trapped in a dynamic where he can never show weakness. Over time, he loses his spark, his focus, even his sense of direction. Stoic philosophy reminds us that suffering is part of the journey, but no one should deepen the pain of someone already down. A woman who does that isn't being honest or realistic. She's being cruel. The man must develop enough self-awareness to recognize when he's being torn apart by cold, calculated words. A real partner lifts you when the world knocks you down, listens when you don't have the words. If instead, she laughs at your confusion, compares your pain to others, or ignores your struggle, something is deeply wrong. That kind of behavior reveals a severe level of emotional toxicity. But she doesn't always act directly. Sometimes, what she wants is to keep you emotionally off balance. And for that, she turns to a subtle and devastating technique: creating confusion where there should be clarity. And that's exactly what the next sign will expose. 7. She distorts reality to confuse you. There's a subtle tactic that can make even a grounded man question his sanity. It's when she says something never happened, even when you're sure it did. Or worse, when she says you're exaggerating, that you misunderstood. This technique is called gaslighting, and it's a cruel psychological game mastered by narcissistic women. They create intentional confusion. Say one thing in the morning, another at night. Change the rules mid-game, and when you question it, they accuse you of being unstable or paranoid. This manipulation fractures your perception. You start doubting your memory, your intuition, even your own voice. Stoic philosophy teaches that a wise man doesn't surrender to collective madness. He anchors himself in reason, even when everything around him seems distorted. When a woman tries to rewrite the facts, she's not seeking clarity, she's seeking control. And the first step to escape is recognizing the game and refusing to play it. Practical example: she treats you coldly for days, then says you were the one who was distant. Or she says, "I never said that," even though you remember it clearly. The feeling of slowly losing your grip on reality is real, and the danger is that it directly impacts your emotional mastery. She uses the power of silence as a complementary tactic. When confronted, she goes quiet. When pressured, she changes the subject. Her silence isn't introspective, it's strategic. It creates doubt, heightens your anxiety, makes you question your own worth. And in this dance, she sets the rhythm and makes you stumble. Men who fall into this cycle start apologizing for things they don't even understand. They live saying sorry, trying to keep the peace. But that peace is fake, built on doubt. The man loses confidence in himself, and without confidence, he loses strength, focus, clarity. Self-awareness is the key. when you start noticing recurring patterns of distortion. You need to write things down, document, record. Go back to the facts and remember, you're not crazy. Stoics don't live by volatile emotions, but by logic, reason, and firm values. In this kind of relationship, that's survival. But beware, once you start seeing and confronting the truth, she'll switch tactics. She might act sweet, vulnerable, remorseful, just to trap you in the cycle again. And that's where many men fall once more. Because the problem was never just what she did, it's what you allowed to continue. And that's a wound most won't admit. Now that you know the signs, the question is simple. Will you keep ignoring them? Or will you start taking action? Because yes, some women love you, but others mold you, drain you, and break you. And they do it with elegance, charm, and a fake sweetness that confuses even the smartest men. If any of these behaviors showed up in your life, maybe it's time to stop trying to fix what only exists to break you. A man who develops self-awareness stops living for external validation. He begins to choose based on truth, not the fear of being alone. Do you have the courage to look at the relationship you're in and ask yourself, am I stronger or weaker since she came into my life? That answer might hurt, but sometimes what you call love is just attachment to pain, and no one grows while chained down. So I challenge you, what are you going to do with this knowledge? Go back to your routine like nothing happened, or use it to take control of your emotional life and your freedom. The man who leads his own mind never becomes a slave to manipulative relationships. If this content made you reflect, subscribe to the channel, hit the bell icon, and share this video with a friend who also needs to open his eyes. Here, we say what no one else dares to, with truth, with purpose, and with practical wisdom.